Tonight, you will close your eyes and open them again in a place where the air tastes of river silt and smoke. The year is so far behind you that there are no years yet. Only the steady breathing of the Tigris and Euphrates, the hiss of wind through reeds, and the slow pulse of a world still shaping itself into what it will be. You are lying on a mat woven from stalks pulled from the marsh, its scent sharp and green even as it begins to rot beneath you. Through the walls of your reed hut, the night hums with frogs and the distant slap of water against dugout boats. Somewhere, a dog barks a thin, hungry sound, and then it is swallowed again by the chorus of crickets. The village is nothing more than a scattering of huts on mud, their roofs curved like the backs of sleeping animals. Smoke from a hearth drifts lazily above, carrying the smell of boiled fish and damp wood. The moon is a dull coin in the haze, and the stars swim like tiny fish in a black, endless canal. You breathe in, slow, feeling the weight of the air, heavy with the knowledge of flood and famine. Somewhere in the dark, someone stirs, coughs, turns in their sleep. A baby whimpers. The river does not stop. You are here now, and there is no going back. Let the world you knew fade like ripples on still water. Listen to the reeds whisper against one another, and let them tell you the story of the life you've inherited. Rest and step softly into the first day. You wake to the sound of water, not the clean, bright rush of a stream, but the slow, heavy slap of the river against mud. Thick and lazy, like an animal that knows it owns the land. The air is warm already and sticky as if the night never fully cooled. Your bed is not a bed at all, but a mat of reeds, bound tightly with twine that scratches the back of your legs when you shift. It smells faintly of damp earth and the faint sweetness of decay because nothing here is truly dry. The mat rests on packed mud, the floor stamped down by bare feet and seasons of use until it is flat, but never smooth. When you run your fingers across it, the grit sticks to your skin. The walls around you are also reeds tied in tight bundles leaning inward, their tips bending together overhead. You can see light between them, thin threads of gold from the sun not yet risen. Every breeze slips through, carrying with it the smells of the village, wood smoke, wet clay, a hint of fish left out too long. Outside, someone coughs, a deep rattling sound that might be age or illness, or simply the way lungs sound when they breathe this air every day. You have no pillow. Your head rests on a folded scrap of cloth that once might have been part of a robe, now worn thin from washing in the river. It smells faintly of the person who used it before you, a scent of sweat, smoke, and oil from the lamps. In the night, you heard footsteps pass close by, neighbours walking to relieve themselves at the edge of the marsh, or perhaps just restless souls who cannot sleep through the mosquitoes. You know the sound of their sandals dragging through dust, and the way the mud squelches when they step too close to the water. The hut is small, so small that you can reach out and touch both walls at once. Above you, the roof is layered with more reeds, woven tight enough to keep the sun from baking you alive too quickly in the morning, but not tight enough to keep out the smallest creatures. In the thatch, you can hear them now, the faint scratching and tiny rustles of lizards, spiders, and beetles that treat your roof like their private marketplace. You have long since stopped flinching when something small falls on you in the night. You only brush it away and turn your face to the other side. You sleep beside others. Family, if you're lucky, strangers, if you're not. The warmth of bodies is both comfort and curse. In winter, if you can call the brief, cool months winter, it keeps you from freezing under the thin covering you share. But in the long, wet heat, their nearness becomes suffocating. Sweat runs down your spine and sticks you to the mat. If someone coughs, you taste it in the air. If someone turns, you wake. Privacy does not exist here. There is only togetherness, for better or worse. Through the thin walls, the sounds of the marsh never stop. The frogs never tire of their endless calls, a deep, resonant music that blends with the chirp of insects. Sometimes a bird cries out sharply, startled from its roost, and you imagine a shadow passing low over the reeds, maybe an owl, maybe something else. The river itself breathes in slow waves, the heartbeat of the village, sometimes swelling and spilling its banks, sometimes pulling back and leaving mud cracked and dry. You are aware, even in half-sleep, that it owns you. Your life is tied to its moods. When rain comes, and it will not politely stay outside. It will seep in through the roof, drip onto your mat, and run in tiny streams across the floor. You will curl your body tighter, trying to keep your feet dry, but the damp will find you anyway. It will cling to your clothes and hair and skin until you smell of wet reeds even in your dreams. Mold will creep into the corners of the hut, softening the walls. The air will feel heavier, and you will breathe as if through cloth. And yet, you sleep here because there is nowhere else. No other roof, no other walls. You know every creak of the reed bundles in the wind, every pattern of light that seeps in at dawn. You know the feel of your neighbour's foot brushing yours in the dark, and the quiet murmur of someone whispering to themselves before sleep takes them. It is not comfort as you once imagined it, but it is the only version of comfort this place offers. The sun is rising now, a pale smear on the horizon, turning the mist above the river into a low, glowing fog. It slips into your hut and touches your face. You can feel the heat building already. You will rise soon because the day does not wait for you. It never has. But for just another moment you remain still, listening to the water and the frogs and the distant murmur of voices outside. The mat is rough beneath you, but it is yours, and for this breath it is enough. Rest for a moment longer. The day will find you soon. You pull yourself from the mat slowly, because every movement feels heavier than it should. The air presses on you, damp and warm, clinging to your skin like another layer of clothing you didn't ask for. In the dim light of the hut, you reach for what passes as your garments, a bundle of coarse fabric that has never known softness. It is woven from wool and plant fibers, thick enough to keep the wind from cutting you in the cool months. But in this heat, it turns your body into a sweating clay jar. The tunic is simple, the colour of the riverbank after the floods, brownish, uneven, and streaked with paler threads where the dye never took. It smells faintly of smoke and your own skin, because it has been worn for many days without washing. Washing is for things that touch the mouth, not for what you wear on your back. You shake it out, but the fibres hold the shape of your shoulders from yesterday. And the day before that, a tiny puff of dust rises when you do, catching the light that slips through the cracks in the wall. There is a belt, or something like one, a thin cord twisted from reeds. You loop it twice around your waist, pulling it snug enough to keep the tunic from hanging open in the wrong places. The cord leaves a faint scratch where it touches bare skin, but you've grown used to it. Beneath the tunic, there is nothing else. No undergarments, no socks, no padding between you and the world. Your legs are bare, streaked with dried mud from yesterday's work, the soles of your feet rough and cracked from walking across reeds, mud, and the occasional sharp bit of pottery left behind in the dust. Your cloak, if the season calls for it, is another piece of the same rough fabric, heavier and more frayed at the edges. It hangs from your shoulders like a wet sail when the air is thick with humidity. In the rare chill mornings, it is the only thing keeping the wind from stealing the warmth you carry from sleep. You keep it folded in the corner of the hut, under a stone to discourage creatures from nesting in it. This morning you don't need it. The air is already heavy with the promise of heat. Around your neck, if you are fortunate, there might be a small amulet, a baked clay bead with the mark of a god pressed into it, or a shell polished smooth by the river. It isn't decoration, not in the way you might imagine. It is a shield against misfortune, a quiet plea to the forces that control your crops, your river, your breath. Some wear theirs proudly, others tuck them out of sight, afraid that jealousy will invite bad luck. Yours rests against your skin, warm from your body. The smell of your clothes becomes part of you, smoke from the hearth, sweat from your labour, the faint sourness of river water that never fully dries out of fabric. It all seeps into the weave. When you walk, the fibers rub against your skin in the same places each day, leaving small red patches that heal only when the weather cools. The texture is not the soft kind that you can forget you are wearing. It is always there, always reminding you that your body is clothed, but never pampered. When you step outside, your clothes take on the light of the village, the dusty gold of the rising sun, the pale grey of the river mist. The tunic clings when you sweat, grows heavy if you fall into the marsh, and dries into stiffness under the afternoon heat. The cord at your waist digs a little deeper when you bend to lift something. Every movement feels recorded in the fabric, as though the day will stay with it long after you've laid it down again at night. You look around and see others dressed in much the same way. There is no fashion here, only necessity. A man passes carrying a bundle of reeds, his tunic tied high on one side to keep it from dragging in the water. A child runs barefoot past you, wearing nothing but a rag that flaps with each step. A woman adjusts the reed cord around her waist, tucking in a pouch of dried fish she will trade later. Everyone wears the same materials, the same earth-coloured shades, the same woven scratch against their skin. It is not beautiful, but it belongs to this place as much as the smell of wet clay or the sound of the frogs. You tie your belt a little tighter and breathe in the river air. This is what you wear, and it will follow you from dawn to darkness, as constant as the mud beneath your feet. And now, with the weight of the cloth on your shoulders, the day truly begins. You step out of the hut, and the light immediately makes you squint. The sun has only just climbed above the reeds, but already it burns in that relentless way it does here, bright without kindness, warming the mud beneath your feet until it feels alive. The air smells of wet earth, smoke, and something sharper, perhaps the faint rot of fish guts left out too long near the cooking pits. The ground is soft in places, sucking at your toes when you step wrong, but baked hard in others where the sun has already begun its work. There is no real morning here, no time kept by clocks, no gentle easing into the day. You wake when the light wakes you, when the heat tells you sleep is over. The first thing is always the river. You walk toward it with the others, women with empty baskets, children carrying clay jars, men already talking quietly about the work ahead. The sound of feet on damp earth is like a slow drumbeat. Your eyes adjust to the brightness as you approach the water. The river greets you with the smell of silt and algae, the faint tang of decay, and the constant music of small waves lapping against the bank. Here the air feels heavier still, filled with the breath of the marsh itself. Frogs plop into the shallows at your approach, leaving only widening circles on the surface. You kneel at the edge, the mud cold and slick beneath your knees. Your hands cup the water out of habit. It is not clean, not in the way you once thought clean should be. It is cloudy, tasting faintly of earth and something metallic. But it is what you have. You splash your face, feeling the coolness cut through the sticky warmth of your skin. For a brief moment you feel almost awake. Others are doing the same. A woman beside you rubs her arms briskly, washing away the thin layer of sweat from the night. A boy fills a jar slowly, careful not to stir the mud too much. An older man swishes water in his mouth, then spits it back into the river, his eyes half closed against the light. There is no soap, no scented oils, just water, and the reed mats you'll dry yourself on later, if you bother to dry at all. After washing, you join a small gathering near the central fire pit. Someone has coaxed the embers from last night into a reluctant flame, feeding it with dry reed stalks until it crackles and sends up a twisting ribbon of smoke. The smoke smells of grass and ash, and it clings to your clothes the moment you stand close. People talk quietly here about the weather, about the river's level, about who is sick and who might not work today. Their voices are low and even, carrying the rhythm of people who speak only to fill the spaces between tasks. You take a reed basket from beside the fire, one you wove yourself weeks ago. Its edges are already fraying, but it will last another few days. Inside is a small clay jar with yesterday's beer, thick, cloudy, more like a liquid bread than a drink. You take a slow sip, letting the sour tang wake your mouth. The grains catch between your teeth, but you swallow them anyway. It is not pleasant, but it is enough to push you forward into the day. Some mornings there is a moment for prayer. Not the solemn gilded kind you might picture, but a simple bowing of the head toward the river, a muttered plea to the gods who dwell in water, sky, and clay. You've seen others leave offerings, small clay figurines pressed into the mud, a scattering of grain, the burnt ends of reeds tied in knots. Whether the gods hear is uncertain, but it feels dangerous not to try. The sun is higher now. Its light turns the water from gold to silver, and the heat starts to lift the smells of the village in sharper detail. The tang of dung from the goats, the salt-sour scent of drying fish, the faint sweetness of reeds crushed underfoot. People begin to disperse, moving toward the day's work. There is no bell to call you, no overseer to shout orders, just the unspoken knowledge that if you do not begin, you will have less to eat when the sun falls again. You breathe deeply once more before turning toward your task. The air tastes of silt and smoke, and you know it will taste the same tomorrow. But for now the morning is done, and the day has truly begun. And somewhere inside you wish you could linger here just a little longer, but the river waits for no one. You feel it before you think about it. The slow, familiar heaviness in your belly, a quiet reminder that your body's needs do not wait for comfort or privacy. Here there is no carved seat, no stone bench, no place set apart for dignity. The villager's toilet is everywhere and nowhere. You step away from the huts, toward the edge of the marsh where the reeds grow thick and tall enough to hide you from casual glances. The ground there is soft, spongy under your feet, and it gives slightly with each step, releasing little breaths of swamp gas that smell faintly of rotten eggs. The air is damp, the reeds swaying in a lazy rhythm as if to make your errand feel more ceremonial than it is. This is the spot you and everyone else have used many times before, though it shifts with the seasons. When the river swells, the place becomes a shallow pool, and you have to find higher ground. When it dries, the earth cracks and hardens, but the smell still clings. You crouch, your tunic gathered in your arms, the reed mat of your belt pressing into your stomach. The mud is cool beneath your bare feet, and the air smells of water and waste, of fish and damp vegetation. The flies are immediate, drawn to you, as though you are just another offering to the marsh. They land on your legs, on your arms, on the sweat along your neck. You wave them away, but they only circle and return. If you are lucky, the waste will sink quickly into the mud or be carried off when the water rises. If not, it will sit in the heat, an unspoken reminder of the village's shared existence. No one here remarks on the smell. It belongs to life as much as the river's scent or the smoke from the hearth. You have grown so used to it that you can almost ignore it, except in moments like these when it is sharp and close. Sometimes in the mornings you will hear the soft splash of someone else relieving themselves nearby, hidden behind another screen of reeds. A cough, a muttered word, the swish of fabric. It is communal, in the sense that you all take part, but solitary in the moment itself. No one looks at one another here. There is an unspoken agreement that this part of the day is as invisible as possible. You use a handful of reeds, or a flat shard of broken pottery to clean yourself if you can find one. The reeds are rough, the pottery cold and unyielding, but both are better than nothing. When you're done, you smooth the mud where you crouched, as if erasing the proof of your presence. The flies will remember, even if no one else does. By the time you stand again, the sun is higher, the light bounces off the water, catching the pale undersides of the reeds in brief flashes. You adjust your belt, shake your tunic back into place, and walk toward the heart of the village. The smell lingers on your hands until you wash in the river, though the river only trades one scent for another, mud for waste, silt for skin. No one greets you or asks where you've been. They already know. Everyone here has made the same slow walk, the same crouch, the same retreat toward the day's work. And in its own way, it is a kind of ritual, a reminder that you are part of this place, tied to its earth, its water, and its constant humbling needs. The morning's small indignities are done. You have taken your place in the quiet, unending cycle of the village, and now, with the reeds whispering behind you, you return to the life that waits. The village is stirring now, reed mats rolled up, smoke curling in low, lazy threads from cooking fires. You follow the scent before you see the food, though food here is more an act of survival than a moment of pleasure. The smell is heavy with boiled grain, faintly sour from fermentation, and under it lingers the salt brine tang of yesterday's fish. You sit near one of the low clay hearths, its sides blackened from years of smoke. The woman tending it crouches with her knees drawn up, stirring a pot with a reed paddle. Inside is the morning beer, thick, cloudy, more porridge than drink, made from barley left to sour in water until it bubbles on its own. She ladles some into a clay bowl and hands it to you without looking up. Her fingers are stained dark from ash, her hair pulled back with a strip of twisted reed. You lift the bowl to your mouth. The beer is warm from the fire, its texture gritty with ground grain. It fills your belly in a way that food should, but offers no sweetness, no crispness, just the taste of earth and labor. Tiny husks cling to your teeth. You swallow them with a second gulp, feeling the faint burn of fermentation at the back of your throat. It is not meant for savoring. It is meant to get you through the day. Beside the fire, a small pile of flat bread rests on a woven mat. Each piece is barely thicker than the palm of your hand, its surface blistered from the hot clay it was baked on. You tear one in half. The bread is dense, chewy, with a faint tang from dough that has been left to rest too long. You eat it slowly, not because it is precious, it is not, but because chewing forces you to think about something other than the work ahead. If you are lucky, there is fish. Not the soft, flaky kind you might imagine, but thin strips of dried and salted flesh, brittle between your fingers. You chew it carefully, the salt stinging small cracks on your lips, the taste sharp enough to momentarily drown out the river's smell. The fish has been here longer than it should be, but salt has kept it from rotting outright. You eat it anyway. Hunger does not argue with taste. Around you, the village eats in the same silence as the night before. There is no chatter, no laughter, just the sound of chewing, of bowls scraping, of the fire snapping, as reeds split in the heat. A child sits nearby, his hands cupping a piece of bread, crumbs falling into the dust between his feet. An old man drinks straight from a jar, wiping his mouth on the back of his sleeve. No one asks for more, there is only what there is. When you finish, you set your bowl in the shallow water near the riverbank to soften the dried grains clinging inside. The mud seeps into it, and you will have to rinse it again before it is clean enough to use tonight. You wipe your hands on your tunic, though the oil from the fish leaves a faint sheen that will cling until you plunge them into the river. The sun is higher now, and with it the flies have grown bold. They land on the bread, on the rim of your bowl, on your skin. You shoo them away lazily, knowing they will return before your hand falls back into your lap. This is breakfast. It will not fill you with joy, but it will fill you enough to carry the weight of the hours ahead. And here, that is all that matters. Somewhere, beyond the reeds, a heron calls out, a long, low sound like the groan of old wood. The day has begun in full. You stand, brushing crumbs from your lap, and turn toward the work that waits. The taste of barley and salt still lingers in your mouth as you step into the light. The air is already thick when you begin, the kind of heat that doesn't just press down from above but rises from the mud, wrapping around your legs like wet cloth. You walk toward the edge of the village with the others, the morning light glaring off the water so brightly it forces your eyes into a narrow squint. Your hands already know what they will be doing before your mind catches up. Pulling, cutting, carrying, tying. Today it is reeds. It is almost always reeds. The same green stalks that make your hut's walls, your floor mat, your sleeping mat, your belt, your basket, your neighbour's roof. The fire kindling. The reeds are everything here, and they demand everything from you. You step into the shallows barefoot, the mud swallowing your feet with each step, cool and sucking. The water is opaque, the colour of clay, and it hides everything. Fish, stones, sharp fragments of broken pots. Sometimes the water hides worse things. You try not to think about them as you wade deeper, the reeds closing in around you. Your fingers find the right place to grip. Just above the waterline, you bend and pull, the stalk resisting with a slow, tearing sound as its roots let go of the mud. The smell is immediate, green and sharp like crushed grass, but with an undertone of rot from the black water dripping off the roots. You gather them in bundles against your hip, each bundle growing heavier as the morning goes on. The cord around your waist digs in as you use it to tie them, the fibers biting against your skin. Others work alongside you, spaced just far enough apart to keep from tangling each other's stalks. There is no talk. Talking means losing the rhythm, and losing the rhythm means the work stretches longer into the heat. Only the sounds of labour fill the air, the wet snap of reeds breaking, the slow splashes of moving through water, the occasional grunt when a root resists too much. By midday, your shoulders ache from the weight, your hands roughened by the reed's edges. The sun is overhead now, and its heat reflects off the water so that you feel it from above and below. The mud between your toes has warmed unpleasantly, and your skin itches where the damp tunic rubs against it. A mosquito lands on your cheek, and you slap it without thinking, leaving a faint smear of blood that is not yours alone. Once the bundles are tied, you carry them back to the village, your arms straining, your back bent under the weight. The reeds are slippery, shedding droplets down your legs as you walk. When you drop them at the work pile, your arms feel strangely light, as if you've forgotten how to hold them at your sides. If it is not reeds, it is clay from the riverbank, thick, heavy, clinging to your fingers until you scrape it off with a shard of pottery. Or it is weaving. Hours spent bent over a frame, your eyes crossing as you thread each stalk through the next. Or it is fishing, standing motionless for so long that your legs go numb, waiting for the faintest pull on the line. Whatever the work, the truth is the same, it will not end. Tomorrow you will do it again, and the day after, and the day after that, until your body cannot anymore. Then the work will pass to someone else's hands, and you will be given a different task, less back-breaking, but no kinder. Still, there is a strange comfort in the repetition. The reeds sway the same way in every season. The mud smells the same year after year. Your hands learn the shapes of the stalks, the way they bend before they break, the way they sound when they slide free of the earth. The river keeps feeding them, and they keep feeding you. Shelter, fuel, something to hold in your hands so you do not sit idle. By the time the sun begins its slow slide downward, your skin is streaked with mud, your tunic heavy with damp, your hands smelling of green and water. You will bring the last bundle to the pile, stretch your back until it pops, and stand for a moment to watch the light turn the river to gold. And then, as always, you will turn back toward the village, because even when the work is done, the day is not. You tell yourself you will rest later, but here, rest is only a word. You return from the reed beds with your arms and back aching, the smell of marsh clinging to you like a second skin. The village is awake in full now, its narrow pathways alive with the shuffle of feet, the low murmur of voices, and the occasional bark of a restless dog. You move through it like a shadow, seen but not important enough to stop. Here, how people treat you depends on who you are, and you are no one, not a chief's child, not a priest's chosen helper, not the spouse of someone with more grain stored than they can eat. You are simply another back to bend, another pair of hands to tie reeds, another mouth to feed from the same pot as everyone else. Respect is measured in usefulness, not kindness. When the elders speak, you listen, not because their words hold deep wisdom, but because the wrong reaction can make your days harder. A misplaced glance, a pause too long before obeying, and you might find yourself with the dirtiest work for a week, or worse, whispered about, your name carried like an unpleasant smell from one ear to another. The children, freer than you in some ways, still know where you stand. They stare at you openly when you pass, sometimes pointing, sometimes laughing for reasons you're not told. Maybe it's the mud on your tunic, maybe it's the way your hair falls into your eyes, maybe it's just that you are not anyone worth imitating. Their laughter isn't cruel exactly, but it's not kind either. The priests, when they cross your path, look through you as if you are made of the same reeds you cut all day. They wear wool robes dyed deeper than anything you could afford, the edges trimmed with patterns that catch the eye. They smell faintly of oil and incense, untouched by the labor you know. If they acknowledge you at all, it's with a small nod that feels more like a dismissal than a greeting. Among your own, those who work beside you in the water, who carry the same cuts on their hands and the same ache in their spines, there is a quiet understanding. No one offers tenderness outright, but they will share a drink of beer if they have more than they can finish, or help lift a bundle too heavy for one person. It is a solidarity built not from affection but from the knowledge that without each other the day would be longer still. There is hierarchy even here. The older men who've survived enough seasons to be half bent from it can speak sharper words without fear. The women who have borne many children can demand help without asking twice. Those with strong ties to someone in the temple, or someone who trades with distant villagers, carry themselves differently, their eyes scanning the horizon for opportunity rather than the mud for their next step. You are spoken to when needed, ignored when not. Praise is rare, criticism casual. If your bundle of reeds is light, it will be noticed. If you're slow to join the morning work, it will be mentioned in the kind of voice that makes your stomach knot. But if you work hard, if you say little, if you keep your head down, you will pass through most days without anyone's hand falling too heavily on your shoulder. And yet, there are moments, small, almost imperceptible, when someone's eyes linger on you longer than necessary. When an elder passes you a piece of bread without comment. When a fellow worker lifts the other side of a basket without being asked. It isn't warmth, but it is recognition. And in this place, that might be the closest thing to affection you'll know. Still, when you lie down at night, you understand that if you vanished into the reeds tomorrow, life here would go on with hardly a ripple. The river would still rise and fall, the reeds would still grow, and the people would treat the next pair of hands just the same. The thought is neither comfort nor despair, it simply is. And in this village, that is enough. The sicknesses here do not announce themselves with drama. They arrive quietly, like the slow rise of the river after a week of rain, until one morning you realize you are standing waist deep in it, and there's no way back to dry ground. You feel it in the heaviness of your limbs, in the way the air seems thicker to breathe, in the dull throb behind your eyes that doesn't fade when the sun sets. There is no clean and unclean in the way you once imagined. The river you drink from is the same river where you bathe, where the animals drink, where you wash your bowls, where the waste of the village seeps back into the current. You tell yourself the flow carries it away, and maybe it does, but never far enough. The water always carries something back. Your skin tells the story before your voice can. Little sores bloom along your legs where the wet reeds rub. The skin between your toes softens, splits and stings when the mud gets into the cracks. Small cuts from sharp reed edges fester into swollen red mounds if you don't notice them in time. You learn quickly that scratching is a gamble. Sometimes it eases the itch, sometimes it opens a wound that will not heal for weeks. The air, heavy and wet, carries sickness as easily as it carries the sound of frogs. Coughs spread through the village the way wind moves through the reeds, passing from hut to hut until everyone knows the sound. Children carry fevers that turn their cheeks hot and their eyes glassy, their bodies shaking under thin mats. The old slip away quietly, their breath shortening each day until it stops altogether. You wash, but washing is an act of ritual more than prevention. You kneel at the riverbank, cupping water over your head, rubbing at your skin with a handful of crushed reeds or wet clay. It makes you feel momentarily lighter, but the river's scent clings to you as soon as you step away. There is no soap, only the faith that the gods of water will keep the worst of the sickness away if you honor them. Sometimes the priest will press a lump of resin into someone's hand, a gift from trade with another village, meant to be burned for its smoke to drive out bad spirits. Other times, a healer will smear a mixture of ash and oil on an open sore, muttering words that sound older than the river. You have seen these charms work and fail in equal measure. Teeth rot here slowly, but relentlessly. You notice it first in others, in the way an elder winces when biting into hard bread, in the blackened edge of a tooth visible when someone laughs. Then one day you bite into a strip of dried fish and feel the sharp sting at the root of your own tooth. You chew on the other side until that one aches too. Even the healthiest carry the marks of the place. Reddish patches on the skin from the sun, shoulders rounded from years of bending to cut reeds, the deep lines at the corners of the eyes from squinting against the light on the water, a thinness that comes not from choice, but from the way each day burns more from you than it gives back. When someone dies, the body is carried to the edge of the village, away from the water, wrapped in reeds and laid into the earth. The air around the burial is thick with the smell of mud and decay, and the living walk away quickly, as if to outpace whatever took the dead. But the truth is, whatever it was, is already inside you. You tell yourself you are well because you are still standing, and in this place, still standing is the only measure of health that matters. Tomorrow the cough might find you, or the fever, or the slow creeping rot in your skin. But today your hands still hold the reeds, your feet still carry you to the river, and your breath still fills your chest. And for now, that is enough. The laws of the village are not written anywhere. They live in the mouths of elders, in the nods of priests, in the quiet agreements made when the river is high and the food is scarce. You learn them by watching, by listening, and if you're unlucky, by breaking one. No one here will speak to you of justice as something noble. Justice is balance, and balance means that when a reed is bent too far, it is cut before it can weaken the wall. Sometimes that reed is a person. If you take what isn't yours, a fish from another's net, a piece of bread from someone's mat, you will be made to give back twice as much. If you cannot, the debt will live in your labour. You will haul reeds for them until your back knots, or work their fishing lines until your skin burns from the sun. And if you refuse, the elders will make an example of you, because an example is a warning the whole village can understand. If your words are reckless, if you spread a rumour that sours the peace or insult someone the wrong ear's value, you may find yourself summoned before the fire pit where the elders sit. They will speak slowly, their words measured, letting silence weigh heavier than scolding. Then the punishment will be chosen, perhaps extra days in the marsh where the water leaches your strength, perhaps nights tending the fire without rest. You will not be struck for this, but the punishment will last longer than a bruise. For greater offences, striking someone of higher standing, disobeying a priest, refusing the labour the village assigns, the punishments are sharper. A public beating with a bundle of green reeds, their tips wet so they sting longer, or being bound at the ankles and left in the marsh's shallows for half a day, where the insects find you faster than the sun does. The water will cool your anger but not your shame, and everyone passing will see. The priests hold their own laws. They are not the same as the elders, but they can bend the elders to follow them, offend the gods, or be accused of it. And your punishment is not pain but fear, fasting until your bones ache, sleeping outside the village walls where the marsh sounds seem closer, or standing in the temple to repeat the same prayer until your voice cracks and your knees give way. Still, there is no wall to keep you in, no guard to watch your every step. The punishment for leaving without permission is not capture, it is erasure. The village will not speak your name again. And when you return, if you return, it will be as a stranger who must start from nothing. This is not exile in the way of kings, it is simply forgetting, and in a place this small forgetting is as final as death. Sometimes the punishments feel cruel, sometimes they feel necessary, but no one questions them aloud. Here, law is not a thing to be argued. It is the shape of the riverbank you live on. You may not like where it curves, but you cannot make it straight. And so you learn to step carefully, to speak carefully, to work carefully. You keep your head low when tempers rise, and you let the elders' words pass over you like wind through reeds. You tell yourself that this is how you survive, not by being right, but by being unseen when trouble moves through the village. Because here, it is not enough to live in the shadow of the river. You must also live in the shadow of the law. The gods here do not live in the clouds. They live in the water that laps against the bank, in the mud that sucks at your feet, in the reeds that bend and rise again in the wind. You do not look up to pray. You look down into the river's slow shifting mirror. There is no single god to rule over all things. There are many, each with their own moods, each with their own hunger. The river god is the most powerful here, patient in the dry season, merciless in the floods. You have seen people kneel at the water's edge, pressing their foreheads into the mud until it leaves a mark, whispering for the river to spare their homes. Others wade in up to their waists, scattering crushed reeds into the current as if the god might weave them into something kinder. In the mornings, the priests sometimes walk through the village, carrying bowls of burning resin that trail white smoke behind them. They say the smoke keeps away sickness, but the gods of air and fire will follow it into the huts and drive out the unseen things that make bellies twist and lungs rattle. The smell is sharp, bitter in your nose, and it clings to your clothes long after the priests have passed. Superstition wraps itself into every gesture. When you drop a tool into the river, you must spit into the water to ask forgiveness before retrieving it. When a child falls ill, a small clay figurine is buried beneath the hut's threshold to trap the sickness inside the earth. If someone dies, the family leaves a bowl of beer at the riverbank at dusk, not for the living, not for the dead, but for the ones in between. The gods do not promise kindness. They do not promise justice. They promise only that if you honor them, you might be spared the worst of their anger. A bad season of floods means the offerings were not enough. A sudden sickness means someone broke the unspoken rules. The elders will debate in low voices over who angered which god, but the truth is, no one ever truly knows. Even the smallest acts are colored by belief. When you walk past the oldest tree in the village, a crooked willow that leans over the water, you do not point at it. To point is to invite the tree spirit's attention, and no one wants that. When you light the cooking fire, you drop the first pinch of salt into the flames, watching it spark and hiss, a quiet acknowledgement to the god of heat. The temple is little more than a larger hut near the riverbank, its reed walls decorated with bits of coloured cloth and shells strung together. Inside, it is dark and close, the air heavy with the smell of burned offerings. The floor is layered with woven mats worn smooth by bare feet. The priests speak there in low, rhythmic tones, their voices rising and falling like the river's current. You never quite catch all the words, but you feel them like a slow drum in your chest. You may not understand all the gods' rules, but you follow them because not following them is unthinkable. Even those who scoff in private still toss a handful of grain into the river before fishing, still touch the amulet at their neck when the wind shifts. Faith here is not a choice. It is as much a part of the village as the mud under your feet. And whether or not the gods are listening, you act as if they are, because in this place, belief itself is a kind of survival. The sun slides low, turning the river's surface into a sheet of burnished copper. The air cools just enough to notice, though the heat still clings to your skin like a damp cloth. The work is done for the day, or at least the work the day demanded. Now there is the evening's ritual, gathering at the hearth for the last meal before darkness swallows the village. The smell reaches you before the sight. Boiled fish again, its scent sharp and oily, mixed with the earthy sweetness of barley. You sit near one of the clay pots resting over the fire, the smoke curling upward in thin ribbons that sting your eyes, but feel strangely comforting. The fire pops as damp reed stalks split in the heat. A woman crouches low, stirring the pot with a wooden paddle worn smooth by years of use. She ladles the stew into clay bowls, thick, cloudy, dotted with tiny bones too small to bother removing. You accept yours with a nod. The fish is soft from the boiling, almost melting into the grain, its flavour strong enough to mask the faint sourness that creeps in when water has sat too long in the jars. You eat slowly, blowing on each bite, letting the steam rise and warm your face. The barley swells in your mouth, heavy and bland, but it fills the hollow in your belly. Bread, if there is any left from the morning, is torn into strips and dipped into the stew until it collapses into a soggy paste. Someone passes you a strip of dried fig, rare, traded from far away. It is sweet, but not in the way you once imagined sweetness. It is dense, chewy, with a whisper of something fermented. You chew it slowly as if to make the moment last. Around the fire, people speak more than they do in the morning. Low voices share bits of news: whose child is sick, whose net caught the largest fish, who found a clay jar floating down from upriver. There is laughter sometimes, short and quiet, the kind that doesn't echo beyond the circle of light. The smoke softens everything, blurring the lines between faces, making the night feel closer. Children finish quickly, their bare feet slapping against the packed earth as they run off toward the dark edges of the village to play before being called back. The elders linger, sipping the last of their beer from wide-mouthed jars, tilting them to catch the grain at the bottom. You drink too, the thick liquid sitting heavy in your stomach, a warmth that feels almost like contentment. When your bowl is empty, you set it aside for washing in the morning. The fire is fed one last armful of reeds, flaring briefly before settling into a bed of glowing coals. Shadows stretch long across the ground, broken only by the flicker of flame. This is dinner, never a feast, but always an ending. A final gathering before the village sinks into its own quiet, before the river's voice becomes the only one you hear. The taste of barley, fish, and smoke lingers on your tongue as you stand, stretching the ache from your shoulders. The night will be short. It always is, and in a few hours, the cycle will begin again. When the fire has burned down to glowing embers and the talk has faded into the soft rustle of reed mats being unrolled, you lie down in the dimness of your hut. The air is still warm, though the edge of the heat has been blunted by night. You close your eyes and the sounds of the village become the sounds inside your head. The river's gentle slap against the bank, the soft scrape of someone shifting nearby, the muffled cough of a neighbour through the thin walls. Sleep here is not the deep, effortless thing it might be elsewhere. It comes in waves, light and restless, breaking each time a mosquito hums past your ear or a dog lets out a sharp bark in the distance. But when it does come, it carries you into dreams that are not entirely your own. Some nights you dream of leaving, walking away from the reeds, the mud, the smell of fish and smoke. You see yourself in a place where the water is clear enough to see your toes, where the ground is dry, and the wind smells of something sweet. In those dreams, you are clean in a way you can't be here. Your skin feels light, your clothes soft, your belly full. But even in the dream, you don't know how you got there, and you don't know if you are allowed to stay. Other nights, your dreams stay closer to home. You dream of the river swelling until it swallows the huts, lifting them gently like toys and carrying them out into an endless shining plain. You dream of catching a fish so large it could feed the whole village for a month, its scales glittering like hammered bronze. You dream of weaving reeds into a mat so perfect that the gods themselves would use it to rest. Sometimes, though, the dreams are small and strange. You see a single grain of barley resting in your palm, so heavy it bends your wrist. You walk through the marsh and every reed you touch turns to gold, but it is soft, melting between your fingers before you can carry it away. You find a jar of beer that never empties, no matter how many gulps you take, but its taste changes each time, from sweet to bitter to salt water to nothing at all. There are darker dreams too. You dream of standing knee-deep in the river and feeling something cold and strong wrap around your ankle, pulling you down. You dream of coughing so hard you cannot breathe, your voice lost in the night while the village sleeps on. You dream of someone calling your name, but when you turn, there is only the crooked willow by the water, its branches reaching toward you. And yet, even the uneasy dreams are a kind of comfort. They belong to you in a way little else does. No one can take them. No elder can order them away. No priest can tell you they are wrong. When you wake in the darkness, the heat and the smell of the marsh heavy around you, you close your eyes again and try to slip back into them. Because here, in this place where every day is bound to the same labour and the same river, dreams are the only journeys you will ever take. And so you hold them close, even the strange ones, letting them carry you somewhere else just for a while before the morning finds you again. You already know the dangers here. You felt them in the air, in the water, in the tired weight of your own bones. Death in a Sumerian reed village is not dramatic. It does not come with warning bells or cries of alarm. It slips in quietly, like mist over the river at dawn, and once it settles, it does not leave. The river is the first and oldest threat. When it rises too high, it takes without asking. Huts are swallowed whole, belongings drift away, children vanish in the brown churn. When it runs too low, the fish vanish, the reeds dry to brittle stalks, and the water turns foul. You cannot drink what is left without feeling it claw at your stomach hours later. Fever is a constant companion here. It hides in the water, in the breath of those you share your mat with, in the bite of the smallest insect. It burns through children fastest, leaving their bodies light as reeds in the arms of their mothers. The cough that begins as a nuisance can hollow you out in weeks. There is no cure, only waiting, praying, and hoping the gods are too distracted to notice you this time. The work itself can kill you, though it rarely does all at once. It takes you piece by piece, the cuts on your hands from the reeds that fester in the heat, the muscles in your back that knot and twist from years of bending, the skin on your feet that cracks until the mud seeps in, and the swelling begins. By the time the damage is too much, you are too worn to fight it. There are sharper deaths too. The marsh hides things that watch from the water, snakes that slide unseen until you feel the flash of their bite, the slow heaviness in your limbs as the poison spreads. Sometimes it is a crocodile, its eyes just breaking the surface, still as driftwood until it lunges. Most of the time you never even hear the splash. There is the danger of others, though it is quieter here than in larger settlements. A dispute over a fishing spot, an accusation of theft, a whispered suspicion that you have offended the gods. These can end in blows or in exile, and exile is its own kind of death. Alone beyond the village, you last only as long as your hands can find food and your feet can carry you. Famine is rare but remembered. The elders speak of years when the river ran low and the nets came up empty, when people chewed reeds just to have something in their mouths, when children's ribs stood out like the thin lines on a clay tablet. Even the ones who lived never forgot the hunger. You can see it in the way they guard their food, in the way they glance toward the storage jars as if counting. And then there are the deaths that arrive without reason. Someone lies down at night and does not rise. A woman collapses in the marsh with her basket half filled. A man stumbles into the fire pit. His words tangled, his eyes already gone somewhere else. The village makes its offerings, whispers about curses or bad omens, and then moves on. You live here knowing that none of it is far away. The river that feeds you could drown you. The food that fills you could rot you from within. The hands you work beside could pull you down just as easily as they could lift you up. And so you step carefully, you listen to the warnings in the elders' silences, and you pray not for long life, but for one more sunrise. Because here, in the Sumerian reed village, survival is not about avoiding death. It is about postponing it, and you never know for how long. There are whole worlds you will never touch, and you know this, though you cannot picture them. The elders sometimes speak of places beyond the horizon, but their words are like smoke, shapes that vanish before you can hold them. You have never seen a mountain. The farthest you've ever walked is a day along the riverbank, and even then the land felt the same. Reeds, mud, the brown curve of water. You will never see an ocean. You've heard of it. A river so wide it has no banks, so deep the gods themselves swim in it. But to you it is only a story told in the same tone as tales about monsters and spirits. You will never see stone cities, their walls too high for birds to fly over. You will never see gold that shines without tarnish, or glass so clear you can see your own eye through it. Books do not exist for you. Writing is a thing only the scribes know, marks pressed into wet clay that hold meaning you will never read. If someone speaks of the past, it is only as far back as their own memory can reach. Anything older belongs to the gods. The great stories will die when the mouths that tell them go silent. You will never see snow. You know the word for cold, but it means a different thing here. The damp chill of morning mist. The wind that slips under your tunic during the brief season when the sun feels less cruel. You cannot imagine the sky dropping white powder, or the earth turning quiet and still under its weight. You will never see the stars without the breath of the marsh rising between you. At night, their light bends and wavers in the humid air, as if the river is trying to pull them down. You do not know that in other places they burn sharp and clear, so close they feel within reach. For you, they will always be faint and far away. There are foods you will never taste. Fruit with skins like fire, spices that sting the tongue and make the eyes water. Bread so soft it folds under your fingers. Your meals will always be barley, fish, the bitter green of river plants, the sour tang of beer. Hunger has shaped your mouth more than desire ever could. There are faces you will never meet. People who speak in ways you cannot understand, whose clothes are bright and heavy, whose skin carries the scent of lands far from water. They will live and die without knowing your village exists, just as you will live and die without knowing theirs. You will never see your own reflection clearly. The river gives you only a trembling shadow, a version of your face that is always shifting. You know yourself by touch, not by sight, the shape of your own jaw, the roughness of your hands, the length of your hair when it falls into your eyes. It is not sorrow that comes with this knowing. It is simply the shape of life here. The river gives, the river takes, and the world beyond its banks might as well be another realm entirely. The things you'll never see are not stolen from you. They were never yours to begin with. And so you live without them. Your eyes fixed on the narrow strip of earth and water that will hold you for all your days, never knowing what it is to miss what you cannot imagine. When your days here are done, the village will not stop, the river will not slow, the reeds will sway just as they did the morning you were born, and just as they did the morning you first carried a basket heavy enough to bow your back. Your absence will be like a stone dropped into the marsh. Ripples for a moment, then only still water. What you leave behind depends on how you lived, though the truth is, even the most visible lives fade quickly here. Perhaps there will be a mat you wove, its edges fraying under someone else's feet. Perhaps the clay jar you used each day will pass into another's hands, the shape of your grip still faintly pressed into its surface. Or maybe a story about you will linger for a few seasons, about the time you caught more fish than anyone else, or the day you waded into the river to save a child from the current. Stories here are as fragile as smoke. They rise and vanish, carried away by wind you cannot feel. If you have children, they will carry your work more than your name. Your hands will live in their hands. How they knot reeds, how they tilt their heads to listen for the sound of fish moving in the shallows. They might remember your face for a time, but not forever. Faces here dissolve into the same mud-brown memory, indistinguishable from the generations before. If you have nothing and leave nothing, the earth will still take you. You will be wrapped in reeds and placed in the soft ground beyond the huts, where the river's breath still reaches in the night. The air there smells the same as the marsh where you lived, the wet sweetness of decaying plants, the faint sharpness of silt. Over time, the reeds covering you will break down, just as the walls of your hut will, just as your own bones will. The river is the only true keeper of memory here, and even it does not hold them for long. Floods will erase the burial mound, water will claim the place where you once worked, and new huts will be built over the ground that covered you. The children who run there will not know the name of the one beneath their feet. You leave behind only the same thing everyone does. The proof that you were here, hidden in the small changes you made to the village's rhythm. A mat repaired one more time before it tore completely. A wall of reeds stacked tighter than it might have been otherwise. A jar of beer that tasted slightly better because you stirred it longer. Tiny things, invisible except to those who were close enough to see you make them. And when the last person who saw you is gone, there will be no difference between you and the thousands who came before. You will belong entirely to the marsh, to the river, to the slow cycle of growing, cutting, weaving, and rotting. The village will go on. The reeds will rise again. No one will speak your name, and that is not a tragedy here. It is the way of things. You will become part of the air that smells of silt, part of the mud that clings to bare feet, part of the faint green scent of new reeds in spring. And in that way, though no one will know it, you will never truly leave at all. The night settles over the village like a woven mat laid gently across the land. The river's voice softens, the frogs take up their slow, steady chorus, and the air cools enough for your breath to feel like your own again. Fires die to embers. Shadows stretch and blur until there is no difference between the outline of a hut and the shape of a reed bed in the distance. You lie on your mat, the familiar scratch of it beneath your shoulder blades, the faint creak of the reed walls in the night breeze. Somewhere nearby, someone shifts in their sleep, the rustle of their tunic against rough fibers almost louder than the wind. The air smells of river silt and smoke, of clay jars cooling after the day's heat, of something sweet and faint from the marsh flowers blooming unseen in the dark. You think of the river, how it fed you, how it threatened you, how it never belonged to you and never will. It will rise and fall long after your name is gone, long after the last hut you knew has been rebuilt and rebuilt again. The reeds will grow in their endless rhythm, cut and tied and woven, only to grow again. The same work, the same hunger, the same narrow strip of earth. Your eyes grow heavier. The sounds blur together. The faint plop of something slipping into the water, the sigh of the wind pushing through the reeds, the steady heartbeat of insects in the dark. These sounds are older than you, older than the village, older than the first hut built on this bank. They will outlive everything you have known. You feel the weight of your body sink into the mat, as if the earth is pulling you closer, not to harm you but to hold you. The world beyond the reeds fades, its mountains you've never seen, its oceans you've never touched, its roads you will never walk. All that remains is the night, the river, the slow turning of the world you will never see from afar. No one remembers your name, but that is all right. There are no wolves at the door, no cold in your bones, no hunger clawing at your belly for now. You have survived another day in the reed village. The river breathes beside you. Sleep now.